Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a 28-year-old accountant living in Ohio, and I've always been the responsible one in my family. You know, the daughter who helps with bills, who listens to everyone's problems, who never causes drama. But 3 months ago, I made one decision that changed everything. I bought a house for $900 and my family kicked me out for it. Now, before you think I'm crazy, let me ask you this. What would you do if your family called you selfish for choosing your future over funding someone else's dream? Because that's exactly what happened to me, and what came next will shock you. It started on a Tuesday morning. I was scrolling through real estate listings during my lunch break, something I'd been doing for months. See, I'd been saving every penny I could, living at home to cut costs, dreaming of owning my own place. That's when I saw it. A listing that made me do a double take. $900, fixer-upper, cash only, as is. The photos showed a small house that looked like it had seen better days, sure, but it was a real house with real potential. I called the number immediately. The seller, an elderly woman named Mrs. Henderson, sounded tired. "Honey, I just need it gone. My late husband bought it as an investment 40 years ago, and I can't deal with it anymore. It needs work, but the bones are good." That afternoon, I drove out to see it. The neighborhood was quiet, older, but well-maintained. When I walked up to the house, my heart started racing. Yes, it needed cosmetic work. The paint was peeling, the front steps were loose, and the yard was overgrown. But something about it felt right, like coming home. I made the offer on the spot, $900 cash. Mrs. Henderson accepted immediately, and we arranged to close within 2 weeks. I was so excited when I got home that evening. My family was gathered in the living room, Mom, Dad, and my 25-year-old sister Jessica. They were looking at brochures for some wellness retreat in Colorado that Jessica wanted to attend. The cost? $3,000. "Sarah!" Jessica jumped up when she saw me. Perfect timing. Mom and Dad said they'd help with half of the retreat cost, but I'm still $1,500 short. You've been saving up all this money, and you know how important this is for my spiritual journey. I took a deep breath. "Actually, Jess, I have some news. I just bought a house." The room went silent. Mom looked up from the brochure. "You what?" "I bought a house. It's a fixer-upper, but it's mine. I paid $900 cash for it." Dad's face turned red. $900? Sarah, what kind of house costs $900? You got scammed. "I didn't get scammed, Dad. It just needs some work." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "So you're saying no to helping me with the retreat?" "Jess, this isn't about you. This is about my future. I've been dreaming of owning my own place, and this is my chance." Mom stood up, shaking her head. "Sarah Elizabeth, I am ashamed of you. Your sister has been planning this retreat for months. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her personal growth, and you choose to throw away $900 on some condemned building instead of helping your family." "It's not condemned, Mom, and it's not throwing money away. It's an investment." "An investment?" Dad laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sweetheart, I've been in construction for 30 years. No legitimate house sells for $900 unless it's ready to be demolished." The argument escalated quickly. Jessica was crying, saying I'd ruined her dreams. Mom was lecturing me about family loyalty and responsibility. Dad was calling me naive and irresponsible. Finally, Mom said the words that changed everything. "If you think that junk house is more important than your family, then maybe you should go live in your precious investment." "Fine," I said quietly. "Maybe I will." "Good," Mom snapped, "because I'm embarrassed to call you my daughter right now. You've shamed us all with your selfishness." That night, I started packing. I could hear Jessica crying in her room and my parents having heated conversations downstairs. Nobody came to check on me. Nobody asked if I needed help or wanted to talk. The next morning, I loaded my car with my essential belongings. As I was carrying boxes to my car, I noticed Mrs. Peterson from next door watching from her window. Mom was outside watering her flowers, making sure everyone could see the family drama unfolding. "So it's true then," Mrs. Peterson called out. "Martha told me you bought some crack house instead of helping your sister." Mom looked up from her flowers. "That's right, Helen. Sarah decided that living like junk was more important than family. Those words hit me like a slap. Living like junk. She said it loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. I could see curtains moving in other windows, neighbors pretending not to watch while absolutely watching. I drove away that morning with my car packed to the brim, my heart broken, and everyone in my family convinced I'd made the worst decision of my life. What I didn't know was that they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The first week in my new house was rough, and I mean rough. The electricity worked, but only in half the rooms. The plumbing was functional, but ancient. The heating system sounded like a dying whale whenever it kicked on. I was sleeping on an air mattress in the living room because the bedroom needed too much work before I could use it. But you know what? Every morning when I woke up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. This was mine. Every creaky floorboard, every drafty window, every repair bill. It was all mine. My family had gone completely radio silent. I'd been removed from our family group chat. When I tried calling, my calls went straight to voicemail. Jessica posted photos from her retreat on Instagram. Apparently, Mom and Dad had covered the full cost after I left. The caption read, "So grateful for family who support dreams. Some people don't understand what real love looks like." The isolation was brutal. I'd lost my family over what they saw as a stupid financial decision. Some nights, lying on that air mattress listening to the house settling around me, I wondered if they were right. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I had been scammed. But then I'd remember something. When Mrs. Henderson handed me those keys, she'd said something strange. "This house has good bones, honey. Better than most people realize." At the time, I thought she was just trying to make me feel better about my purchase. Now, I was starting to wonder if there was more to it. I started exploring my new neighborhood properly. It was called Riverside District, an area I'd never really paid attention to before. The houses were mostly from the 1920s and 30s, small but well built. The neighbors I met were friendly enough, though I could tell word had gotten around about the girl who bought that old Henderson place. It was during my second week there that I met Mr. Williams. He was an elderly black man who lived 3 houses down, and he'd been watching me work in my yard, pulling weeds and trying to make the front look presentable. "You're the young lady who bought Mrs. Henderson's place," he said as he walked over with a glass of sweet tea. "That's me. I'm Sarah. Harold Williams. Been living on this street for 42 years. He handed me the tea and studied my house with experienced eyes. "You know, I remember when the Hendersons first bought that place back in '83. Paid $12,000 for it then." $12,000 for this house? Mr. Williams chuckled. "Oh, honey, this neighborhood has seen some changes over the years. That house you bought, it was beautiful once. The original owners built it in 1924. Solid craftsmanship, real hardwood floors under that old carpet, original crown molding, cast iron fixtures." Something in his tone made me pay attention. "Mr. Williams, can I ask you something? Do you think I made a mistake buying this place?" He was quiet for a long moment, looking up and down the street. Then he smiled. "Let me ask you something, Miss Sarah. You ever hear about urban renewal?" I shook my head. "Well, you might want to do some research. Things are changing around here. Big changes coming." That night, I couldn't sleep. Mr. Williams's words kept echoing in my head. Big changes coming. What did that mean? I spent hours on my laptop searching for information about urban renewal, about my neighborhood, about anything that might explain why an elderly man would hint at changes coming to Riverside District. What I found made my heart start racing. There were city council meeting minutes dating back 6 months, discussing a major urban renewal project for the Riverside District. The city was planning to invest millions in infrastructure improvements, new businesses, and housing development. Properties that were currently considered undesirable were being targeted for renovation incentives and tax breaks. But that wasn't the most shocking part. I found preliminary property assessments that had been conducted as part of the renewal planning. Houses on my street, similar to mine, were being valued at $45,000 to $60,000 after basic renovations. My $900 house could potentially be worth 50 times what I paid for it. I sat back in my chair, stunned. No wonder Mrs. Henderson had been so eager to sell. She probably had no idea about the urban renewal project. But someone did. Someone who might have been watching the city council meetings. Someone who understood the potential. The next morning, I called Mrs. Henderson. "Oh, Sarah dear, how are you settling in?" "I'm doing well, Mrs. Henderson. Can I ask you something? Did anyone else make offers on the house?" There was a pause. "Well, there was one other person. A man who called a few times said he represented some investment company, but he was rather pushy and honestly, he made me uncomfortable. He kept saying I needed to sell quickly before the city condemned the property." My blood ran cold. "What company?" "I don't remember the name, dear, but he kept emphasizing that 900 was generous for such a property. Said I was lucky anyone would take it off my hands." After I hung up, I realized what had happened. Someone had been pressuring Mrs. Henderson to sell quickly and cheaply, probably hoping to flip it once the urban renewal project became public knowledge. But I'd gotten there first. I'd accidentally stumbled onto the investment opportunity of a lifetime. That evening, I walked through my house with new eyes. Every room I looked at, I wasn't seeing what was broken anymore. I was seeing what could be. The hardwood floors Mr. Williams had mentioned were indeed under the old carpet. The crown molding was dusty but intact. The cast iron fixtures just needed cleaning and paint. I started making lists, room by room, project by project. With some basic renovations and a lot of elbow grease, this house could be beautiful. More than beautiful. It could be valuable. But I didn't tell my family. Not yet. See, there was something poetic about their silence. For 3 weeks now, they'd been convinced I'd made the stupidest decision of my life. Jessica had been posting retreat photos with captions about family who understand priorities. Mom had been telling neighbors about her foolish daughter who chose a condemned house over family loyalty. They thought I was living like junk, just like Mom had said that day. But I was sitting on a gold mine and they had no idea. The key to my $900 house was hanging on a hook by my front door, an old, tarnished brass key that Mrs. Henderson had given me at closing. Every time I looked at it, I remembered being a little girl and dreaming of having my own front door key, my own space, my own life. That key represented everything I'd ever wanted: independence, ownership, a future built with my own hands. It was funny how something so small could mean so much. But as I sat in my house that 3rd week, watching the sun set through the windows I'd just cleaned, I realized this was about more than just the money or the investment potential. This house was teaching me something my family never had. Sometimes what looks like junk to everyone else is actually treasure. You just have to be brave enough to see it. The 4th week in my house changed everything. I'd been doing research every night after work, diving deep into city planning documents, property records, and historical data about Riverside District. What I discovered made me realize I hadn't just stumbled onto a good deal. I'd accidentally intercepted what could have been someone else's calculated investment flip. I started with the basics. I pulled the complete property history from the county recorder's office. The house had been built in 1924 by a local carpenter named Thomas Mitchell for his family. It had passed through several owners over the decades, but here's what caught my attention. Every property transaction showed increasing value until the 1980s, when something strange happened. The values started dropping significantly, and the property changed hands more frequently. Then I found the smoking gun. In the city planning department's archived files, I discovered that Riverside District had been targeted for urban renewal as far back as 2019, but the COVID pandemic had delayed implementation. The project was back on track now, with a projected investment of $12 million in infrastructure improvements scheduled to begin in 6 months. But here's the kicker. I found email communications between the city and various development companies dating back 8 months. One name kept appearing: Pinnacle Property Solutions. They'd been monitoring the renewal project and had compiled a list of target acquisitions in the district. My address was on that list. I did some digging on Pinnacle Property Solutions. They specialized in buying distressed properties in areas slated for development, then flipping them after improvements were announced. Their typical profit margin? 500, 800%. The man who'd been pressuring Mrs. Henderson? He worked for Pinnacle. I sat in my living room that night, surrounded by printed documents and highlighted maps, and felt something I'd never experienced before. I wasn't just lucky, I was smart. I'd made a good decision based on instinct, and now I had the research to back it up. But I needed more than just paper proof. I needed real numbers. The next day, I called 3 different property appraisers. I told each one the same story. I'd inherited a house and needed to know its current value and potential value after renovation. I didn't mention the purchase price or the urban renewal project. The first appraiser, Janet Morrison, came out that weekend. She spent 2 hours going through every room, taking measurements, testing fixtures, examining the foundation and roof. "Sarah, I have to ask, how long has this property been in your family?" "Why do you ask?" "Because this is solid construction. Look at these joists, this foundation work. They built houses to last in the 1920s. The electrical needs updating, and the plumbing could use some modern fixtures, but structurally, this house is sound." She handed me her preliminary assessment. Current condition, $28,000. After basic renovations, $52,000. The second appraiser came Monday evening. Robert Chen was younger, more tech-savvy. He used some kind of laser measuring device and took digital photos of everything. "You know, I've been tracking property values in this area," he said as he worked. "There's been some interesting city council activity lately. Have you been following the urban renewal discussions?" My heart jumped. "A little. Why?" "Well, if those infrastructure improvements go through as planned, properties in this district are going to see significant appreciation. I'm seeing preliminary estimates suggesting 300–400% increases in property values over the next 3 years. His assessment was even better. Current condition, $31,000. Post-renovation potential, $65,000. And if the urban renewal project proceeded as planned, $95,000, $120,000. The third appraiser never showed up, but 2 out of 3 was enough. I was sitting on a property that could be worth over $100,000 within 3 years. I'd paid $900. That's when I called my old college friend Marcus, who worked in real estate development in Chicago. "Sarah, girl, it's been forever. What's going on?" I told him everything. The house purchase, the family drama, the research I'd been doing. Wait, he interrupted. "You bought a house for $900 in an area that's about to get $12 million in urban renewal funding?" "That's right." "Sarah, do you understand what you've done? You've basically won the real estate lottery." "But Marcus, here's my question. Should I renovate and flip it, or should I hold on to it?" "Honey, that depends on what you want. Quick money or long-term wealth?" "What do you mean?" "If you renovate and sell in the next 6 months, you could probably get $50,000 to $60,000. That's a nice profit. But if you renovate, rent it out, and hold it for 3 to 5 years, you could be looking at a property worth 6 figures that's generating monthly rental income." That conversation shifted my entire perspective. This wasn't just about proving my family wrong anymore. This was about building wealth, creating a future, establishing financial independence. I spent the next 2 weeks developing a comprehensive plan. I got quotes from contractors for essential renovations, electrical update, plumbing improvements, new flooring, paint, and landscaping. Total cost, $15,000. I also researched rental rates in the area. Similar houses were renting for $1,200–$500 per month. After renovation, I could potentially charge $1,800. But I needed one more piece of evidence before I made my next move. I went back to Mr. Williams. "Mr. Williams, that day we talked about urban renewal. You seemed to know something specific. Can you tell me more?" He smiled and invited me in for coffee. His living room was filled with photographs of the neighborhood from different decades. "Miss Sarah, I've been watching this street change for over 40 years. I was here when it was the place to live, when young families were moving in and fixing up these old houses. I was here when the economic downturn hit and people started moving away. And I've been here watching the slow comeback." He pulled out a folder of newspaper clippings and city documents. "I attend every city council meeting, have for 20 years. I knew about the renewal project before most people because I pay attention. When I saw you move in, working so hard on that house, I thought you might be someone who would appreciate knowing what's coming." "What exactly is coming?" New streetlights, repaved roads, a community park where that vacant lot is on Oak Street, tax incentives for small businesses to open on Main Street, and grants for homeowners to improve their properties. He handed me a document I hadn't seen before, a detailed timeline of the renewal project phases. Phase 1, starting in 4 months. Infrastructure improvements. Phase 2, starting in 8 months. Park development and business incentives. Phase 3, starting in 12 months. Residential improvement grants. Mr. Williams, why are you telling me all this? Because, honey, you remind me of my daughter. She took risks, made smart decisions, built something from nothing, and because I've seen too many young people get taken advantage of by developers who know what's coming. Developers like Pinnacle Property Solutions? His expression darkened. You've heard of them. They tried to buy my house before I did. Those vultures have been circling this neighborhood for months. They've already bought 3 properties on Cedar Street, paying elderly homeowners well below market value. Mrs. Henderson was smart to sell to you instead. That evening, I had everything I needed. Property appraisals, renovation estimates, rental income projections, urban renewal timeline, and confirmation that I'd outmaneuvered professional investors. But I still wasn't ready to contact my family. There was something else I needed to do first. I called Mrs. Henderson. Sarah, dear, how are you doing with the house? I'm doing well, but I need to tell you something important. Mrs. Henderson, your house is worth a lot more than we thought. I explained everything. The urban renewal project, the property appraisals, the development company that had been trying to lowball her. There was a long silence. You mean to tell me that house could be worth $50,000? Mrs. Henderson, after the urban renewal project is complete, it could be worth over $100,000. Another silence. Sarah, are you telling me this because you want to renegotiate our deal? No, ma'am. I'm telling you because it's the right thing to do. You deserve to know what your property was really worth. She started crying. Honey, my husband always said that house would be valuable someday. He bought it as our retirement plan, but we never needed to sell it until now. I thought I was just getting rid of a burden. Mrs. Henderson, I have a proposition for you. What's that? I'm going to renovate the house and rent it out. What if we became partners? You put up half the renovation costs, and we split the rental income and the property appreciation. You would do that? Yes, ma'am. It feels right. We met the next day to discuss details. Mrs. Henderson was sharp as a tack when it came to business. We agreed on a partnership structure. She would contribute $7,500 toward renovations in exchange for 30% ownership. I would contribute $7,500 plus all the labor coordination for 70% ownership. The renovations began immediately. I took vacation time from work to oversee the electrical and plumbing updates. Evenings and weekends, I painted, installed new fixtures, and refinished those beautiful hardwood floors Mr. Williams had told me about. 8 weeks later, my $900 junk house was transformed. The hardwood floors gleamed. The kitchen had new appliances and fresh white cabinets. The bathroom had modern fixtures but kept its vintage charm. Every room was painted in warm, neutral colors that made the space feel bigger and brighter. I posted it for rent at $1,150 per month and had 5 applications within a week. But that's when I got the call that changed everything. Miss Sarah, this is David Kim from Riverside Development Group. I understand you own the property at 847 Maple Street? That's right. We're working on several projects in the Riverside district, and we're interested in purchasing your property. Would you be interested in hearing our offer? I might be. What did you have in mind? We're prepared to offer $120,000 cash, closing within 30 days. I nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? $120,000 cash. Can I ask why you're offering so much? Miss Sarah, that property sits on a corner lot in the heart of the renewal district. We believe it has significant development potential. I told him I'd need time to consider the offer. After I hung up, I sat in my beautifully renovated living room and laughed. I laughed until I cried. My family had kicked me out for buying a $900 junk house instead of funding my sister's $3,000 retreat. I was now holding a cash offer for $120,000. It was time to go home. The monthly family barbecue was this weekend. For the past 3 months, it had been happening without me. But this time, I was going to show up uninvited. I spent Friday evening preparing my presentation. I printed out all the documents, the property appraisals, the renovation receipts, the rental applications, and most importantly, the $120,000 purchase offer. Saturday afternoon, I drove to my parents' house. I could see the family gathered in the backyard: Mom, Dad, Jessica, my Aunt Carol, Uncle Mike, and a few family friends. Jessica was showing off photos from her retreat, no doubt telling everyone about her spiritual awakening. I parked across the street and watched for a moment. 3 months ago, this had been my life. This had been my family. They'd chosen to exclude me rather than support my decision. Now I was about to show them exactly what my decision had been worth. I walked into the backyard carrying a large manila envelope. The conversation stopped immediately. "Sarah?" Mom looked shocked. "What are you doing here?" "Hi, family. I thought it was time we talked." Dad stood up, his face already showing irritation. "Sarah, if you're here to apologize for the way you acted, then we can talk. But if you're here to defend that ridiculous house purchase, then you should leave." "Actually, Dad, I'm here to show you something." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Let me guess. Pictures of your crack house?" "Something like that." I opened the envelope and pulled out the before and after photos of my house. This is what my house looked like when I bought it. I held up the before photos. There were a few snickers from the group. "And this is what it looks like now." I held up the after photos. The snickering stopped. "Sarah," Aunt Carol said slowly, "that's beautiful." "Thank you, but that's not why I'm here." I pulled out the appraisal documents. I had the house professionally appraised. Its current value is $65,000. Mom frowned. "But you paid $900. "That's right, but here's the interesting part." I pulled out the urban renewal documents. My neighborhood is part of a $12 million urban renewal project. Property values are expected to increase by 400% over the next 3 years. Dad took the documents from me, studying them carefully. "Sarah, where did you get these?" "City Planning Office, Public Records. It's all been approved and funded." Uncle Mike whistled low. "Sarah, if this is accurate, your house could be worth over $100,000, which brings me to this." I pulled out the purchase offer from Riverside Development Group. "I received this offer yesterday." I handed the letter to Dad. His eyes widened as he read it. $120,000? He said quietly. The backyard went completely silent. Mom sat down heavily in her chair. "Sarah, you're telling us that the house we thought was worthless is actually worth over $100,000? "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Jessica's voice was small. "But how did you know?" "I didn't know, Jess. I took a risk based on instinct, and then I did my research to understand what I'd bought." Dad looked up from the letter. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. We all do." "Dad, do you remember what you said to me 3 months ago? That no legitimate house sells for $900 unless it's ready to be demolished?" He nodded, looking ashamed. "You were wrong. Sometimes houses sell for $900 because the seller doesn't understand their value, because professional investors are trying to manipulate the market, or because someone like me gets lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time." Mom wiped tears from her eyes. "Honey, I said terrible things to you. I told the neighbors you were living like junk." "I know, Mom. Mrs. Peterson made sure to tell me." "Can you forgive us?" I looked around at my family, the people who had doubted me, dismissed me, and kicked me out for making what they saw as a foolish decision. Here's the thing. For 3 months, I've been living alone, working on my house, building something with my own hands. And you know what I learned? I don't need your approval to make good decisions. I don't need your permission to take risks, and I don't need your validation to know my worth. The silence stretched on. "But," I continued, "I do miss my family. I miss being part of this. I miss Sunday dinners and holiday traditions and having people to share good news with." Jessica stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I was so focused on my retreat, on what I wanted, that I couldn't see you were making a smart decision." "Jess, your retreat was important to you. I understand that. But I said awful things about you. I posted things on social media that made you look selfish. I saw them. Can you teach me about real estate? About how you knew to research all this? I smiled. I'd love to. Dad cleared his throat. Sarah, what are you going to do with the offer? I'm not taking it. Everyone looked surprised. You're not? Mom asked. No, I'm going to rent the house out for $1,800 a month and hold on to it. In 5 years, it'll be worth even more, and I'll have been collecting rental income the whole time. Uncle Mike laughed and shook his head. Sarah, you've accidentally become a real estate mogul. Actually, Uncle Mike, it wasn't an accident. Mrs. Henderson and I are partners now. We're looking at buying another property next month. Dad stood up and walked over to me. Sarah, I am so proud of you. You made a decision that we all thought was crazy, and you turned it into something incredible. Thanks, Dad. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you willing to help us understand how you did this? Because I think we could all learn something from you. I looked around at my family, gathered in the backyard where I'd grown up, where I'd been dismissed and kicked out for making what they saw as a terrible choice. I'll make you all a deal. I'll teach you everything I've learned about real estate investing, about research, about taking calculated risks. But in return, I want something. What's that? Mom asked. I want you to trust me. When I make decisions that seem crazy or risky, I want you to ask questions instead of making judgments. I want you to remember that sometimes the thing that looks like junk to everyone else is actually treasure. Dad reached into his pocket and pulled out his house key. Sarah, I want you to have this back. Your room is exactly like you left it, and you're welcome here any time. I took the key, thinking about the old brass key hanging by my front door. The key to my own house, my own future, my own independence. Thanks, Dad, but I have my own place now. I pulled out my phone and showed them photos of my rental application and lease agreement. My tenant moves in next week. $1,800 a month, 2-year lease. Mom shook her head in amazement. Sarah, 3 months ago, I thought you'd made the biggest mistake of your life. And now? Now I think you might be the smartest person in this family. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself sitting at the picnic table surrounded by my family, explaining urban renewal projects and property appraisals and rental yields. They hung on every word like I was some kind of financial guru. But the best moment came when Jessica pulled me aside. Sarah, I need to tell you something. What's that? The retreat was amazing. I learned a lot about myself and about what's important to me. But you know what the most important thing I learned was? What? That real strength isn't about following your dreams. It's about making the hard choices that build your future, even when everyone around you thinks you're crazy. She hugged me tight. I want to be like you when I grow up. That evening, driving home to my own house, my beautiful, renovated, profitable house, I thought about the old brass key hanging by my front door. 3 months ago, that key had represented failure in my family's eyes. It was the symbol of my selfishness, my poor judgment, my willingness to choose junk over family loyalty. Now, that same key represented everything I'd always dreamed of: independence, financial security, and the courage to trust my own instincts. Sometimes what looks like junk to everyone else really is treasure. You just have to be brave enough to pick it up, smart enough to research it, and patient enough to let it appreciate in value. My family had kicked me out for buying a $900 junk house instead of funding my sister's retreat. 3 months later, that junk house had taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. My judgment was worth more than their approval, and now they all wanted in.